in your career, because you've been successful in your career, how did you gain access to kind of influential leaders and build relationships and get them to advocate for you? What were some of the key things that, either habits or hacks or things that you did in order to gain their trust, in order for them to kind of create those opportunities for you and invest in you the way they did?
Monica, absolutely. I think that the thing that people should know is, and I know that you know this for a fact, that everything is relational, right? Like it's all about the relationships you have and the relationships you build. And I think more so than anything, it's been the fact that I come into spaces authentically and wholly myself. And so in owning kind of who I am authentically, it removes kind of that, this is gonna sound bad, but it removes kind of the initial imposter syndrome. That is the initial barrier to entry for people to build relationships. Because I come into spaces like, hey, my name is Suezette Yasmin Robotham, and I'm here because I'm going to be a cultural value add. So I come kind of with that initial like confidence, and like not in like a braggadocious or arrogant way, but I'm like, I'm supposed to be here, right? And I know imposter syndrome, especially for women of color, is a big thing. But having that barrier to entry then makes it a little bit more, my focus becomes more of, okay, now that you're in this space, like, what are the rules? So one of my mentors on Google, Suzanne French, who I love to pieces, says I'm a rules girl. And so initially for me, it's like understanding like, what are the rules of this space I'm in now? Hierarchical, right? So do I have to talk to my boss's boss through their permission? Is there like already a skip level plan in place? Like, how do I actually build like those relationships? And some of it honestly is like, just like naturally assessing the landscape and like really understanding like, who are the folks that like I think I have an opportunity to learn from? And like, what are the proper ways to also plug into those folks, right? Because I even think about my experience at Google. One of like my biggest sponsors, and he's also become a mentor, is an Australian man. And like we were just the other day messaging on LinkedIn. I was like, I miss you. I quietly want to email your EA calendar. And he's like, please do. But like, it was just this natural thing of like, I saw in his leadership and the way that he actually thinks, a gap for me is like being able to think about, or at the time, a gap for me was like really understanding like, how does this staffing world work in this tech space? And like, how does he as our director think about it? And what are his expectations, right? And like being able to go to him with like an analysis of like, this is what I see. Here's what I don't understand. Could you help me understand, right? And it began to build like a really natural relationship around like, oh, like she understands like her own like areas of opportunity for growth and development. And we actually, without like me having to officially ever say you're my mentor, or develop the relationship, right? But I think that rewinding back comes from really clearly understanding the rules and the dynamics and the relationships that you have to have in this space.
What does it take to land a job at an organization, at what these big tech names that you have worked at, because you're behind the scenes? Share with us maybe some of the faux pas or the mistakes that some of our, family members within the, within our, just diverse populations make. What advice would you give them?
The first advice I give, and I think that's a great question, right? Because folks will get lost in my LinkedIn mailbox all the time. Like, it's a question I get so often. But I think the first thing I will tell anybody is like, make sure that your LinkedIn has searchable keywords in it, right? So like large tech companies have entire teams that are focused on passive recruitment. And LinkedIn actually has sizable contracts with large companies to provide them that access to find talent. And I think the thing that we do on LinkedIn is either we have not given our qualifications in such a way that it like, it evokes someone to want to know more, or we're not really making sure that our transferable skills are relatable in a way that it would translate to another space, right? So like, and going back to my story, I was sourced through LinkedIn, but I've always had like a really like cogent, compelling, and concise headliner. And then within kind of my summary, I have the things that I do that would also be like super searchable, right? So like if someone was looking for someone that had expertise in diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would come up in a search, right? Because of the terms that I have. And I think the area where I see, unfortunately, folks fall down the most is not being able to talk about the transferability of their skills, right? So if you spent years doing work, like if you've been a project manager in banking, right? Like what you need to talk about, not so much is that you are a project manager in banking, but that you have like strategic thought leadership, that you like to work through, complex problems, like being able to pull out those things, because those are the skill sets that tech companies are looking for. And a lot of times, our resumes in particular are wrapped up in words that just don't translate. Right. And I don't want to put onus just on the candidate, because I do think there's an opportunity for tech to also think more expansively about what they're looking for. Right. So it's not that you're looking for a recruiter from McKinsey. You're looking for somebody that can be like a strategic thought leader, that can do analysis, like those types of things. So I think it's both sides of the interview table need to work on that, but definitely like really building a stronger LinkedIn presence with searchable key terms is really important. I also think the resume needs to actually translate. So one, like I think folks, and it sounds bad, but they have like their mom's resume. It's a job description summary, right? So like, sharpen pencils, typed on a computer. And I'm like, no, like your resumes now, in order to be competitive, have to be impact statements. So they have to be qualified, as much as possible, quantifiable data, right? So like, if it can't just be like led a marketing campaign, it should be led 13 high stakes marketing campaigns that had reach to this size audience that ultimately drove to X outcome.
What advice would you give women to kind of accelerate their success in the digital age and stay ahead of the curve as we continuously see this disruption in technology?
I would say, especially now that a lot of conferences that require you to travel are online, attend the conference, right? Like the investment you can make is an investment in yourself. So if you're in sales, there's a Sisters in Sales conference that's coming up soon. There are just so many different conferences and events that are now just a click away, a Zoom away, that I'm like, if you really want to like brush up on like a specific skill, do that. If you really want to like learn from someone in your field that you may not have had an opportunity to interact with because you didn't know about them before they were online, right? Sign up for that session, because one, you just never know what information that person is going to impart. Two, to the point that you made earlier, in terms of building your community, you're also expanding your network. Especially if it's like a well-curated event space. And I feel like now people are also trying to make sure that they're embedding networking into the online and virtual space. And I also say, just like read. And people are like, well, where should I be reading? And I'm like, sometimes the best articles I find, and I don't know if you've had this experience, like at the top of my LinkedIn, they have like the 5 kind of top topics. That articles for the day. And I rabbit hole down through that. Because there are some like great articles on LinkedIn. Those articles are great. And I'm like, doesn't require you to like have like an HBR subscription, right? Because like the information is all kind of there. Literally leverage like LinkedIn every single day to like kind of guide and learn. And the last recommendation I'll make, because I can go on and on about this, is I have a smart home. So if you say hey to the G word, or if you say
right,
they're listening all the time, but like every single room in my house has that. And what I've done is I've picked out the news kind of outlets that I want every morning. And I get a regular update from, of course, like more things like Reuters and CNN, but I also get the top 10 things from Business Insider every day. I listen to TechCrunch every day, and I listen to Cheddar, because like those are the things also informing like my understanding of what's happening in the industry.